Story 1. The Parking Lot. I want to start by saying I've always been the kind of person who pays attention to her surroundings. My mom drilled it into me from a young age. Be aware, trust your gut, don't let being polite override your instincts. I thought I was good at it. I thought I built enough awareness over the years that nothing could catch me off guard. This caught me off guard. It was a Thursday evening in November, maybe 6:30. Dark already the way it gets early in the fall. I'd stayed late at work to finish a project and stopped at a grocery store on the way home, the large chain kind with the massive parking lot that's always half empty after 6 on a weeknight. I parked toward the back out of habit, closer to the cart return, which is something I always do and have never thought twice about. I was in the store for maybe 25 minutes. Nothing notable, nothing memorable. Grabbed what I needed, paid, head back out into the cold. The parking lot was noticeably emptier than when I'd arrived. Maybe a dozen cars spread across a lot that could hold 200. Mine was visible from the entrance. I could see it from the moment I walked out the doors. There was a man standing near it. Not next to it exactly, maybe 2 car lengths away, in the empty space between my car and the one beside it, just standing there, hands in his jacket pockets, not walking toward any particular vehicle, not even looking at his phone. I slowed down without stopping completely and watched him for a second. He hadn't noticed me yet. He was just standing there, oriented toward my car, in a parking lot with almost nobody in it, in the dark, in November. Every reasonable part of my brain started generating explanations. He's waiting for someone inside. He's parked nearby and just stepped out for air. He's dropped something and is looking for it. Normal things. Things that happen. But my gut said something else entirely. I didn't go to my car. I turned and walked toward the store entrance, pulled out my phone, and pretended to take a call. Loud enough to be heard, animated enough to look like I'd forgotten something and was being told about it over the phone. I went back inside and positioned myself near the window by the self-checkout where I could see my car. He was still there. He moved slightly, closer to my car now, standing at the rear of it, looking at the license plate, just standing there, looking at my license plate. I went to the customer service desk and asked if someone could walk me to my car. The woman I spoke to didn't even flinch. She radioed for someone immediately, a store employee who walked out with me within 3 minutes, a big guy who made conversation the whole way to my car. The man was gone by the time we went outside, not in any car nearby that I could see leaving, just gone. The employee waited while I loaded my groceries and got in and locked the doors. I thanked him genuinely, probably more than was necessary, and he said, very matter-of-factly, "You did the right thing coming back in." Something about the way he said it, like he'd done this before, like it wasn't his first time he'd walked someone to the car, stayed with me more than anything else that night. I sat in the locked car for a minute before starting it. Looked around the lot carefully. Nothing. I pulled out and drove toward the exit, and that's when I saw him again, standing at the far edge of the lot near the street, watching the cars leave, standing completely still, just watching. I don't know if he saw me. I don't know what his intention was or whether I misread the whole thing entirely. I've gone back and forth on it more times than I'd like to admit. What I do know is this. He was standing at my car, looking at my license plate, in an almost empty parking lot at night. And when I came back with someone else, he disappeared. I don't park near cart returns anymore. I don't park in the back of lots. I park close to the entrance, under lights, in view of the doors. And if something feels wrong, even if I can't explain it, even if every reasonable explanation exists, I just go back inside, every single time, no second guessing, because the employee was right. Going back inside is always the right thing to do. The motel room. I travel for work about twice a month. Nothing glamorous, mostly regional trips, overnight stays in mid-range hotels along the interstate. I've stayed in hundreds of them at this point, honestly. I have a routine, same type of room, same floor preference, same habits. You stop seeing them as individual places and start treating them as interchangeable. That's probably part of why I wasn't more careful that night. I was checked into a motel somewhere in the middle of a long drive, planning to finish the last 2 hours the next morning. It was a standard stop. I got in around 8, dropped my bag, went out for dinner at a nearby place, and came back to the room around 9:30 to wind down for the night. I was in bed, almost asleep, when I realized I'd left my laptop in the bag in the car. Not just the bag. There's a folder in it with documents I needed for the meeting first thing in the morning. The kind of thing that actually really mattered, and I needed to get it. I groaned, got up, put on my shoes, and without changing what I was sleeping in, grabbed my room key and my car keys and went out to the parking lot. It was a cold, quiet, and dark night, except for the light above the motel entrance and a few security lights in the lot. I grabbed my bag from the back seat, locked the door, and headed back toward my room. My room was on the ground floor, along the side of the building, facing the secondary parking lot rather than the street. That stretch of the building wasn't well lit. One light at the far end of the walkway that didn't do much for the middle section where my room was. As I turned the corner of the building, I stopped. My room door was open. Not wide open, slightly, maybe 6 inches, enough to see the light from inside spilling out into the dark hallway. I stood there for a second, running through whether I could have left it open. I was sure I hadn't. I remembered the click of it closing behind me, remembered checking the handle the way I always do. But I was also tired and rushing, and it was just a minute, a second. I really did doubt myself. I didn't go to the door. Instead, I stepped back around the corner of the building and stood in the shadow there, watching the door from a distance. For almost 2 minutes, nothing happened. The door stayed where it was, open those same 6 inches, the light from inside steady. Then it opened further. A man stepped into the hallway. Not from inside my room. He came out of the doorway at the right angle, stepped onto the walkway, pulled the door most of the way closed behind him, not all the way. He stood there for a second, looking in both directions along the walkway. His gaze passed over the corner where I was standing in the dark, but didn't stop there. He walked in the opposite direction, toward the other end of the building, and disappeared around the far corner. I called 911 from where I was standing, kept my voice very low, told them what I'd seen and where I was. They dispatched a car. I stood in the shadow and didn't move until the patrol car pulled into the lot, at which point I walked out and flagged it down. 2 officers went to my room. The door pushed open easily. Whoever had been in there had opened the latch, not broken it, but forced it, but opened it in a way that shouldn't have been possible without my key card. The motel's old lock system, the officer told me, was a model with a known vulnerability that had been documented in a safety advisory 2 years earlier. Some of them could be shimmied open with the right tool in under 30 seconds. My bag had been gone through, not ransacked, gone through carefully. My laptop was still there. My phone charger was still plugged in. What was missing was small, a folder of documents I'd gone to get from my car, which I still had with me, my work ID badge that had been in the front pocket of the bag. My work ID, with my name, my photo, my company name, and in some cases, a proximity chip that opens certain doors. I've thought a lot about what someone would want with that specific item. It's not something you grab for impulse theft. It's specific and it's targeted. The police took a report. The motel refunded my stay and offered an upgrade, which felt truly absurd under the circumstances. The man I saw that night was never identified. The security camera at the far end of the walkway had been positioned in a way that only caught the edge of the building, not the walkway itself. I didn't sleep that night, obviously. I drove the last 2 hours in the dark and sat in the parking lot of the building where my meeting was until the sun came up. I don't stay on ground floors anymore. I don't stay in rooms that face secondary lots anymore, and I never, ever leave my room with the door fully locked and the interior latch engaged. The kind that can't be opened from outside regardless of how good your tool is. But the thing I think about most, the detail that still sits wrong in my stomach. He stepped out of my doorway and pulled it almost closed behind him. Not all the way, almost, like he was planning to go back in. The gas station. I was 19 when this happened, driving back to college from a holiday weekend at home. Long drive, mostly highway, the kind you do in kind of an autopilot state where the miles blur together and you're just managing time. I stopped at a gas station around 11 at night. Not because I was low on gas. I had plenty of it. But because I'd been driving for 3 hours straight and needed to stretch and get something to drink to stay alert for the last hour and a half. The station was on the smaller side, attached to a convenience store, one of those standalone places you find at highway exits that seemed designated to exist between other places rather than have an identity of their own. One other car was in the lot when I pulled in, parked at the far pump. I didn't pay much attention to it. I got out, stretched, went inside, bought a coffee and a snack. The guy behind the counter was young, probably not much older than me, earbuds in, and barely looked up. I was in and out within 5 minutes. When I came back outside, a man was standing at my car. Not pumping gas near it, standing at it. Specifically at the driver's side door, looking in it through the window with his hands cupped around his eyes to cut the glare. Looking into my car, in the dark, at 11 at night. I stopped walking immediately. He hadn't heard me come out. I stood on the curb outside the door and watched him for a moment. He was clearly looking at something on the passenger seat, his face close to the glass, hands pressed around his eyes. On my passenger seat, visible through the window, was my tote bag, the stuff I used to bring home, snacks my mom had packed, a few items of clothing, my old laptop from high school I'd picked up to bring back home. I walked back inside immediately, told the guy behind the counter that there was a man looking into my car. He pulled out one earbud, looked at me, and then looked past me out the window. He reached under the counter for a phone, and I wasn't sure if he was going to call someone or if he was just checking it. But before he did anything, the man apparently moved. The guy's expression shifted slightly, and he said, "He's walking away." I waited inside for a few minutes before going back out. The other car that had been at the far pump was gone. The lot was empty except for mine. I got in, locked the doors immediately, and sat there for a second looking around. Then I noticed the passenger door wasn't fully closed. I was certain I had closed it. I always closed it. I tossed my bag in, pushed the door shut, and heard it close. But it was sitting open half an inch, not obvious from what it was from the inside, just enough that the door hadn't latched. My tote bag was still there. Everything appeared to be there, but the bag had been moved, not dramatically, just slightly from where I'd put it. The handles that had been facing the windshield, now facing the back seat. Someone had opened the door and looked through the bag while I was inside. I don't know what they were looking for. I don't know if they found it. Whatever it was. I know that there was a man at my car in the dark parking lot at 11 at night, looking through my window before opening the door and going through my things. I called my mom from the parking lot, which was the only thing I could think to do at the time, and she stayed on the phone with me the entire last hour and a half of the drive home. I reported it to the police when I got back to campus. They said without plates or description detailed enough to identify anyone, there wasn't much to pursue. Standard response, I understand, just didn't make me feel better. What I couldn't stop thinking about wasn't the bag or what was in it. It was that he'd heard me come out of the store. He'd been so focused on what he was doing that he hadn't registered me standing on the curb, just watching him. He wasn't nervous about being seen. I'm sure he'd done it before, enough times that the caution most people feel would have probably worn away. I always check my passenger door now, every time I get in the car after leaving it alone, even for a few minutes. And I never stop at highway exits after dark. Not alone, and not ever. Story 4. The rideshare. This happened about 2 years ago, on a night I've replayed so many times in my head that it almost honestly doesn't even feel real anymore. But it is, every detail of it. I had been out with friends on a Saturday night. Nothing wild. Dinner, a couple of drinks, the kind of night that ends at 11 instead of 2. I was staying at a friend's apartment across town, not somewhere I'd been before, and I ordered a rideshare because it was easier than navigating an unfamiliar area late at night. The car that pulled up matched the app. Right make, right color. I checked the plate against what the app showed. It matched. I got in. The driver was male, probably 50s, which I noted without thinking much of it. He confirms my name the way they're supposed to. I confirmed his. Everything checked out. We pulled away. The first few minutes were normal. He didn't talk much, which I prefer anyway. I looked out the window and watched the city go by, checking the route on my app the way I usually do. And suddenly, I noticed we weren't going the right way. Not dramatically wrong, not the opposite direction, not back of some alley, just a different route. Taking a left where the app said right, heading slightly west when we should have been going east. I watched the little car icon on my map drift off the highlighted route and said, as casually as I could, "I think the route on my app looks different than yours. Are you taking a different route?" He said without even looking back, "Construction, this is faster." I have heard this before. Drivers do take alternative routes sometimes. I looked up the area on my maps separately to see if there was construction. There wasn't anything listed. I watched the route deviation widen. We were now a noticeable distance from where we should have been moving. A neighborhood I didn't even recognize, darker and less commercial than the area we started in. I made a decision in the next 30 seconds that I think a lot about. I called my friend, not texted, called. And when we picked up, loudly and clearly, I said, "Hey, I'm in my rideshare. I'm going to send you my location right now. Just track me until I get there, okay? I'll stay on with you." I opened the app, shared my live location with her. In the cross streets I could see out the window, I was saying out loud, like I was giving her information. I felt the energy in the car shift. It's a hard thing to describe. Nothing physical happened. Nothing was said, but something changed in the quality of the silence. The driver made the next turn back toward the corrected route. Within 4 minutes, we were back on the path the app showed. He didn't say anything. I stayed on the phone with my friend the whole way, kept talking about nothing, kept my voice steady. He pulled up to the correct address. I got out, said thank you, the way you always do, and waited on the sidewalk until the car was gone before I went inside. I did report the route deviation through the app that night. I don't know what came of it. I never heard back beyond an automated confirmation that my report had been received. I've talked to other people about this since, and their responses are split. Some people say drivers legitimately detour sometimes, that I probably overreacted, but the rerouting back to the correct path proves it was innocent. Maybe. I genuinely allow for that possibility. But I kept coming back to the shift in the car when I made that phone call. The way the silence changed, the way he turned back toward the right route almost immediately after hearing me say the cross streets out loud. After hearing me tell someone I was sharing my location. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was something. I can't know for certain. So, whoever's on the end of the phone will know exactly where I am. I always say the streets out loud, and I always share my location. So the driver knows exactly who knows.